right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive. We're going to be exploring something pretty fascinating today. Isolation tanks.
Oh, yeah.
Those sensory deprivation chambers.
Right.
You know, where you float in the dark and it's completely silent? Salt water, no light, no sound. Just you and your thoughts. So have you ever thought about what happens to your mind when you take away all that external noise?
Well, it's a question that's really been a source of fascination. I mean, for scientists, philosophers,
Yeah.
for decades, really. And in fact, isolation tanks were actually originally invented
Oh, wow.
by a neuroscientist by the name of John C. Lilly way back in the 1950s to explore exactly that. What happens when you remove all that input?
Wow, the 1950s. That's amazing. So I imagine that the experiences that people have had in these tanks must have been like all over the board, right?
Yeah.
From like super chill and relaxing to like totally bizarre.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some people talked about like traveling to other worlds. Others have reported intense hallucinations.
Oh, wow.
It's really a wide range.
So we're going to be talking about both, right? Like the actual science behind these experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of the more, I guess you could say, out there theories that they've inspired, right?
Exactly. We're going to be looking at some really fascinating sources like John C. Lilly's own writings
Oh, cool.
and some talks by E.J. Gold, who was, a really key figure in the human potential movement.
Okay, so let's go back to the science first for a second. I was reading that early research on sensory deprivation was met with a lot of, well, skepticism is kind of an understatement.
Yeah.
Some scientists were actually worried it could be dangerous.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, back then,
Yeah.
this whole idea of like deliberately depriving yourself of all sensory input, it was pretty radical.
Right.
A lot of researchers thought, oh my gosh, this is going to lead to psychosis
Yeah.
or other mental health problems. It's funny, right?
Totally.
When you think about it now,
Yeah.
because like sensory deprivation is so popular now.
Right, exactly. Like all the float therapy places.
Exactly. Spas are offering it.
Sign me up.
Right.
But yeah, I guess I can see how, going into the unknown
Yeah,
could be a little scary.
absolutely. But John Lilly, the guy who invented the isolation tank,
Yeah.
and another researcher named Jay Shirley, they had a completely different experience.
Okay.
They actually really enjoyed floating in the tank.
Okay.
They even found it like addictive.
Addicted to sensory deprivation. That's kind of wild.
I know, right?
Wow.
But what they realized
Yeah.
early on was that it wasn't just about removing all stimuli,
Yeah.
but specifically what they called the noxious stimuli.
Okay.
The discomforts, the aches, the little annoyances
Oh, I see.
that we deal with constantly every single day in normal life.
So it's like, even if you have like, I don't know, a tag on
Yep.
your shirt that's itching you, like that could mess up the whole experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They realize those tiny little discomforts
Yeah.
can actually like throw off your mental state and totally skew the results of the experiment.
Wow.
That's why they went to such great lengths to create this completely neutral environment in the tanks.
So like zero distractions.
Zero.
Total comfort.
Exactly.
And then it's just you and your mind. Free to go wherever it wants.
That's when things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because Lilly himself actually reported some really like extraordinary things that he experienced in the tank.
Okay.
He talked about feeling like another person was present,
Wow.
tapping into like networks of communication from other civilizations.
Right.
Even having like out-of-body experiences
Right.
where he felt like he was traveling to different places.
Okay, now that sounds like a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it really brings up all these questions about like the nature of reality.
Yeah.
And what the human mind is actually capable of. Like, what if by removing those filters, the filters of our everyday perception,
Yeah.
maybe the tank is allowing us to access other dimensions
Wow.
or like other ways of being.
That's a pretty wild thought.
It is.
Like, what if our brains are just like so busy all the time
Constantly.
processing all this information from our senses
Yeah.
that the tank gives them a chance to like finally power down
Right.
and then just explore their own inner world?
That's a really great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's important to point out that Lilly wasn't the only one who reported these kind of unusual experiences. A lot of people who've spent long periods of time in isolation, like, sailors who are out at sea by themselves,
Okay.
polar explorers,
Yeah.
even prisoners in solitary confinement. they've described similar things.
So maybe it's not just the tank itself,
Right.
but something about what happens to the human mind
Exactly.
when it's in a state of deep solitude.
That opens up these possibilities.
Yeah.
And that's where the neuroscience gets really interesting.
Okay.
So Lilly actually said that we use a huge amount of our brain power, like something like 90%,
Wait, 90%? Seriously?
just to deal with gravity.
Just to, like, keep us upright?
Think about it. All those, like, complex calculations that go into maintaining balance,
Yeah.
coordinating movement, even just like staying upright, that takes a lot of processing power.
Wow.
And floating the tank frees up all that mental energy
Okay.
for your mind to just like wander and explore.
So it's like our brains get a break from gravity,
Yeah.
and they finally have some time to just play.
Mm-hmm. What does the brain do
Yeah.
when it has all this extra capacity? It seems like it explores, it plays, it creates.
Okay.
Literally described everything from simple relaxation
Yeah.
to vivid hallucinations
Okay.
to profound insights and even feelings of euphoria.
Okay, that makes sense. But do you think he thought these experiences were like random noise?
Mm-hmm.
Or did he think there was something more to them?
You know, Lilly really believed the tank could be used to explore different states of consciousness
Okay.
and even access parts of the brain that we don't normally use.
Mm.
He actually like mapped out
Wow.
different areas that he thought were associated with fear,
Yeah.
pain, pleasure,
Okay.
other primal emotions.
Mm.
He thought that by floating in the tank, you could actually explore those states safely
I see.
without the usual triggers
Okay.
and responses.
So it's like a controlled environment
Yeah,
for inner exploration.
exactly. And this is where things took a bit of a, I guess, a controversial turn.
Yeah.
Because Lilly actually started experimenting with using LSD in the tank.
Whoa, hold on a second. Combining LSD with sensory deprivation?
I know.
That sounds intense. What was he trying to do with that?
You know, he thought that LSD could actually enhance the whole tank experience
Okay.
and allow him to like break through even further into these sort of uncharted areas of consciousness.
So it was a bold experiment.
It was.
And I'm guessing the results were probably pretty complicated.
They were definitely complex
Okay.
and kind of hard to interpret.
So did he, like, figure out the secrets of the universe? Or did he just have a really, really weird trip?
Well, he did eventually decide that while LSD could definitely like change your perception a lot,
Yeah.
it didn't necessarily expand consciousness in a way that he initially thought.
Okay, so then back to the big question.
Mm-hmm.
What does the tank actually do to consciousness?
Yeah.
Does it expand it? Does it alter it? Does it, I don't even know, like turn it inside out?
I mean, that really is the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think, you know, each person has to explore that for themselves.
Yeah.
But what Lilly's work and, you know, the work of others who've followed in his footsteps really suggests is that the tank can be this really powerful tool for self-discovery.
Okay.
It lets us push the boundaries of how we perceive things
Yeah.
and question what we think we know about what's real and what's possible.
Okay, so before we, go full on into metaphysics and all that,
Right.
I want to talk about another perspective for a second.
Okay.
You mentioned E.J. Gold before, and he had this like totally unique take on isolation tanks
Yeah.
and the nature of reality.
He did. Gold was a really fascinating thinker.
Yeah.
He saw the tank as kind of a way station between worlds, a place where you could kind of temporarily step outside the limitations of, you know, your everyday reality.
All right.
And get a glimpse of what other possibilities might be out there.
I see.
He also talked about this thing called a sanity clause.
Okay, a sanity clause. What's that?
Upon entering the universe.
Okay.
It's this kind of playful but also really thought-provoking idea that if you accidentally stumble upon true sanity,
Oh.
you have to leave this reality.
Whoa, okay, so it's like we're all trapped in our own little limited perspective, and true freedom is actually like transcending those limitations.
Exactly. And Gold thought that the tank could actually help us get glimpses of those other possibilities,
Okay.
even though we, always end up coming back to the familiar world
Yeah,
of everyday life.
after each session.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? Is it because we're just like creatures of habit?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
We have these ingrained patterns,
Yeah.
of thought and behavior that keep us tied to this like particular way of experiencing the world.
Mm.
And Gold actually went even further. He suggested that we are our habits.
Oh, wow.
that our identities are essentially just bundles of these accumulated patterns.
Wait, if we're just a collection of habits, does that mean we're all just like walking around in our own little world, totally oblivious to what's actually real?
Well, it's a pretty radical idea, isn't it?
It is.
But Gold thought that the universe that we experience is actually essentially a projection of our collective consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
this shared reality that we kind of co-create
Okay.
through our thoughts, beliefs, and actions.
Okay, I need a minute to process this.
I know, it's a lot to take in.
It is. So how does the isolation tank fit into all this?
So, if you think about it, the tank, by taking away all that external input,
Yeah.
it allows us to see this process of creation more clearly.
Okay.
It strips away the distractions of the material world,
Yeah.
and it reveals kind of like the underlying structure of our minds.
So you're saying it's like a tool for deconstructing our perception of reality.
Exactly. Gold described it as a way station between worlds, a place where we can step outside, temporarily,
Yeah.
the constraints of our kind of habitual reality, and get a glimpse of the mechanics behind how we create our own experience.
Okay, but if we're all just bundles of habits, how do we actually change those patterns? How do we break free from those limitations?
Well, Gold argued that we don't really overcome habits, we substitute them.
Okay.
You replace unconscious patterns with conscious ones.
So it's not about erasing who we are, but about consciously choosing who we want to become.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he saw the tank as this tool that could help with that process.
I see.
For, becoming more aware of our habits
Yeah.
and then experimenting with new ways of being.
Okay.
But he was also, very clear that the real work starts when we step back into the world and we start applying these insights to, our everyday lives.
So the tank is like a training ground, a place to practice these new ways of thinking and being.
That's a great way to put it. It's not enough to just have, some profound experience in the tank. We have to take those insights and actually integrate them into our daily lives.
Yeah.
Our relationships, our work, everything. It's a constant process of self-discovery and transformation.
This is starting to make a lot of sense, but it also sounds like a lot of work. Like changing deeply ingrained habits takes effort, awareness, and commitment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a lifelong journey.
Right.
But the rewards, as Gold suggests, can be huge.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where we're no longer bound by the limitations of our past conditioning.
Right.
Where we're free to create our own reality, to live with intention and purpose.
That's a really inspiring vision.
It is.
So are isolation tanks like the key to unlocking all this potential?
Well, they can be a powerful tool for sure.
Yeah.
But the real key, like Gold always said, is conscious effort.
Okay.
Taking responsibility for our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions, and making the choice to create the reality that we want to experience.
Okay.
He also talked a lot about letting go of self-importance and not getting so caught up in our own, little dramas
Yeah.
and worries.
So it's about recognizing that we're actually part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Exactly.
And that our choices have like a ripple effect on the world around us.
Right. It's about shifting our mindset,
Okay.
from a mindset of scarcity and separation
Yeah.
to a mindset of abundance and interconnectedness. It's realizing that our minds have the power to create the reality we want to live in, both individually and collectively.
Okay, this is blowing my mind a little bit. So what would Gold say is like the ultimate goal of all this habit changing and reality bending work? Like what are we actually striving for?
Gold really believed that our real identity isn't actually our ego or our personality, but it's this underlying being that's always there,
Okay.
beyond all these temporary constructs.
I see.
It's that pure awareness, that spark of consciousness that's always present,
Yeah.
regardless of our thoughts or emotions.
So it's about connecting with that deeper self.
Exactly.
With our true nature.
Right. And recognizing that we're all just expressions of that same underlying consciousness. It's about going beyond the limitations of our ego and tapping into this infinite potential that we all have inside of us.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like we're all connected at this like deep fundamental level.
We are. And the isolation tank, by quieting the mind, by getting rid of all the distractions from the outside world,
Yeah.
can actually help us access that deeper level of awareness, that sense of interconnectedness. It's about seeing the world not as like a bunch of separate objects,
Okay.
but as this unified field of consciousness.
This has definitely given me a lot to think about. I'm starting to see the tank as not just a place to relax and de-stress, but like a tool for real transformation,
Yeah.
maybe even spiritual growth.
Mhm.
But I have to admit, the whole idea of sensory deprivation is still a little intimidating to me.
Okay.
I just can't help but wonder what it would actually be like to float in one of these tanks in complete darkness and silence.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around this whole idea that we're creating our own realities. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot to take in.
It is.
But before we, get too lost in all the cosmic stuff,
Right.
I kind of want to go back to E.J. Gould's ideas about habits for a second.
Okay.
You said before that he called it, like, the body of habits, which I gotta say sounds kind of creepy.
I know, I get it.
Yeah.
It's not as spooky as it sounds, though. I mean, think about it this way. You have this operating system, right?
Uh-huh.
Running in the background of your mind
Okay.
all the time, even when you're not aware of it.
Yeah.
That's your body of habits.
Okay.
It's all those tendencies, those automatic ways of thinking, feeling, acting that you've developed over time.
So it's like the underlying code, that's
that.
shaping how we experience everything.
Yeah, and Gold thought those habits are what actually determine our reality.
Mm.
He even said, that the universe exists because we do.
Whoa, hold on.
It's a pretty radical idea.
It is. So if our habits shape our reality, I mean, does that mean we're all just walking around in our own little worlds,
Right.
completely disconnected?
It's a great question. Gold's idea was that it's more like our collective consciousness,
Okay.
our shared habits and beliefs
Yeah.
that create the reality that we all experience.
Yeah.
It's like we're all,
Yeah.
contributing to this massive, virtual reality game.
Okay.
And our individual habits are, the code
I see.
that shapes our avatars
Okay.
and how we interact with that world.
Wow. That's a wild analogy.
Yeah.
But I think I'm starting to get it.
Good.
So how does the isolation tank, help us see this more clearly?
Well, imagine, stepping out of that virtual reality game for a bit.
Okay.
That's what the tank lets you do. You remove all the external input,
Yeah.
all the distractions, all the sensory overload from everyday life.
Yeah.
And you start to see the code, the underlying structure, a bit more clearly.
It's like taking a step back from the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the pixels
Yeah, exactly.
that make up the image.
Exactly. And Gold thought the tank could help us become more aware of those really deep-seated habits.
Yeah.
Those patterns
Yeah.
that are shaping our reality,
Okay.
individually and collectively.
Okay, so let's say I go in the tank and I have this big aha moment about my habits.
Yeah.
Then what? How do I actually change those patterns?
That's the real challenge, right?
It is.
And Gold was very clear about this. He said, we don't really overcome habits.
Okay.
We substitute them.
Okay.
We replace those unconscious, automatic patterns
Yeah.
with new ones, more conscious ones.
So it's not about erasing who we are, but choosing who we want to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like learning to reprogram your mind.
Wow.
And the tank, Gold saw it as this tool
Okay.
that could help you with that process.
Mm.
Gives you a space to, become aware of those habits.
Yeah.
Experiment with new ways of thinking and being.
Right.
And actually start to build new neural pathways.
But it's not enough to just have the experience in the tank, right?
Yeah.
We have to actually apply it to our everyday lives.
Exactly. It's like going to the gym.
Right.
Right. You can't just lift weights for an hour and expect to be ripped.
Right.
You got to keep showing up.
Yeah.
Keep putting in the work.
Yeah.
Building those muscles over time.
Yeah.
Same with habits.
Mm.
Takes consistent effort,
Yeah.
awareness, and, a willingness to challenge those old patterns.
So the tank is more of a training ground where you can practice those new ways of thinking and being.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a place to experiment, to explore,
Mm.
to start building those new empowering habits.
Yeah.
But the real transformation happens
Yeah.
when you take it out into the world and you
Mm.
apply it. That's where the real magic is.
Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see how it all fits together, It's about using the tank to learn about yourself, to become aware of those habits,
Yeah.
and then using that awareness to create the reality you want to experience.
You got it. It's a process of deconstruction and reconstruction.
Okay.
Deconstructing those old limiting beliefs and habits
Yeah.
that are holding you back.
Yeah.
And then consciously constructing new ones that are more aligned with what you want,
Okay.
your values, your aspirations.
So let's be real. This isn't easy,
No.
right? Changing habits takes a lot of effort, discipline, willingness to get uncomfortable.
You're absolutely right. It's not always a walk in the park,
Yeah.
but the rewards can be incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine a world where you're not just reacting all the time,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
where you're not like a slave to your old programming.
Right.
Imagine being able to choose your thoughts,
Yeah.
your emotions, your actions,
Yeah.
and creating a life that's truly aligned with what you really want deep down.
That sounds amazing.
It is.
So are you saying that, like, isolation tanks are the key?
Well, they can be a powerful tool for sure.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think, like Gold always said, the real key is conscious effort.
Okay.
Taking responsibility for our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions.
Right.
And choosing to create the reality we want to experience. He also talked a lot about, like, letting go of self-importance.
Yeah.
Not getting so caught up in our own, like, little dramas and worries.
So it's about, like, recognizing that we're all part of something bigger. And our choices have, like, an effect on everything around us.
Yeah. It's about shifting from, like, that mindset of scarcity and separation to one of abundance and interconnectedness.
Okay.
Realizing that our minds have the power to create,
Yeah.
the reality we want to live in, both individually and collectively.
Okay, this is all blowing my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
So what would Gold say is, like, the goal of all this? You know,
Right.
all this habit-changing, reality-bending work. What are we actually striving for?
Well, Gold believed that our real identity isn't actually our ego or personality,
Okay.
but it's this kind of underlying being that persists,
Yeah.
beyond those temporary constructs.
I see.
It's that pure awareness, that spark of consciousness that's
Yeah.
always there,
Right.
regardless of our thoughts or emotions.
So it's about connecting with that, you know, that deeper self, our true nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And recognizing that we are all like expressions
Mhm.
of that same underlying consciousness. It's about moving beyond the limitations of the ego and like tapping into that infinite potential that's inside all of us.
Wow, that's a really powerful idea.
It is.
It's like we're all connected at this really deep level.
Exactly. And the isolation tank, by quieting the mind
Yeah.
and stripping away all the distractions of the external world can help us access that,
Yeah.
that deeper level of awareness, that sense of interconnectedness. It's about experiencing the world not as like separate objects,
Okay.
but as this unified field of consciousness.
This is definitely giving me a lot to think about. I'm starting to see the tank as not just a place to, like, relax and de-stress, but, like, potentially a tool for real personal transformation and even, like, spiritual growth.
Yeah.
But I gotta admit, I mean, the whole idea of sensory deprivation is still a little intimidating to me, you know?
I get it.
I can't help but wonder, like, what would it actually be like to be in one of these tanks? In total darkness? Silence?
It's definitely a unique experience.
Yeah, I mean, after all this talk about, you know, altered states and the nature of reality,
Right.
I'm actually kind of curious to try an isolation tank myself.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of sensory deprivation, I gotta be honest, is still a little intimidating.
I understand.
Like, what is it actually like to float in one of those things?
Mm.
In total darkness, silence.
Well, it's definitely a unique experience, and I'll admit it's not for everyone.
Right.
But a lot of people find it to be like incredibly relaxing and even like transformative.
Oh, so for those of us who, you know, haven't actually taken the plunge, what can we expect? Is it like floating in a giant bathtub?
Well, it's a little different than that. I mean, we're talking about a tank that's designed to block out as much sensory input as possible.
Right, yeah, it's not your typical bath.
No, not at all. First of all, the water in an isolation tank is like full of Epsom salt,
Okay.
and that makes you super buoyant, way more than regular water.
Nice.
You just float effortlessly, almost like you're suspended in midair.
Okay, that actually sounds pretty cool.
Yeah?
So no need to, like, tread water or anything?
No, just pure weightlessness. And then, the water's heated to skin temperature.
Okay.
So you eventually lose track of where your body ends and the water begins.
Wow.
It's this, like, really unique sensory experience.
Yeah.
You feel totally enveloped and supported.
I can see how that would be relaxing.
Yeah.
But what about the darkness and the silence? I think that's the part that freaks some people out.
I get that. It can be a little unsettling at first, for sure.
Yeah.
We're just so used to constant stimulation that suddenly being in like complete darkness and silence can feel strange.
Right.
But as your senses adjust and you start to let go of that initial discomfort, you might be surprised at how peaceful it actually feels. like how much tranquility emerges.
So it's about like surrendering to the experience, even if it's a little weird.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're always in control, remember. If you start to feel uncomfortable, claustrophobic,
Yeah.
you can get out. There's usually a door or a hatch you can open really easily.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
So for someone who's like ready to try it out, what are some like tips to get the most out of it?
Well, I think the most important thing is to just go in with an open mind.
Okay.
Don't get hung up on expectations or like try to force anything.
Yeah.
Just allow yourself to be present in the moment and see what unfolds.
It's kind of like meditation.
Yeah, exactly.
Just observing your thoughts and sensations without judgment.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And if your mind wanders, which it probably will, just gently bring your attention back to your breath.
Okay.
Or to the feeling of the water.
Okay, what about physical discomfort?
Yeah.
I've heard some people complain about like neck pain or feeling claustrophobic in the tank.
Yeah, there are ways to address that.
Okay.
A lot of tanks have, like neck floats to support your head.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can always leave the door a little bit open if you need to feel a sense of space.
Yeah.
And if you are prone to claustrophobia, you might want to start with a shorter session, like 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then gradually work your way up.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Anything else we should keep in mind before our first float?
It's helpful to avoid caffeine or heavy meals beforehand.
Okay.
Because those can interfere with your ability to relax.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And don't get discouraged if you don't have like a profound life-altering experience on your first try.
Right.
It often takes a few sessions to really settle in.
Yeah, I guess it's like anything, the more you practice, the more comfortable you get.
The more familiar it becomes, Every float is unique, though, and,
Yeah.
the benefits can unfold over time.
Okay, so we talked about what to expect, how to prepare. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, like safety concerns. Some people think these tanks are dangerous, that you'll get trapped or you'll go crazy.
Yeah, no, those are common fears.
Yeah.
But honestly, they're mostly unfounded.
Okay.
Modern isolation tanks are, designed with safety in mind.
Yeah.
They have ventilation systems for fresh air, emergency exits that are easy to open from the inside. And the water is, filtered and sanitized regularly.
Right. And plus, you're never really truly isolated, right?
Right.
There's usually someone like monitoring the session.
Exactly. There's always someone nearby.
Just in case something happens.
Right. And like we said, you're in control.
Yeah.
If at any point you feel uncomfortable, you get out.
Okay.
It's really no more dangerous than taking a bath, just a lot more unusual.
Okay. You've convinced me I'm adding try an isolation tank to my to-do list.
Good. I think you'll enjoy it.
But before we go, I want to go back to something Gold said. It really stuck with me.
Okay. He
talked about the tank being a way to experience like our native state.
Yeah.
What did he mean by that?
It's a thought-provoking idea, isn't it? It challenges this idea that the material world, the world of our senses, is our primary reality. What if, like Gold suggested, our true, native state is actually one of pure consciousness, of unfiltered awareness?
So you're saying maybe we're, more at home in that state of pure being?
Yeah.
And the tank just lets us reconnect with that part of ourselves?
It's a possibility. Maybe the tank, by removing all the distractions, the sensory overload, gives us a glimpse of what it means to just be. Without all the labels, the stories, the judgments that we usually put on our experience.
That's a really beautiful thought.
It is.
And a great note to end on.
Yeah.
So as we come to the end of our deep dive into the world of isolation tanks, what's one thing you hope people take away from this?
I would just encourage everyone to approach this whole topic with curiosity and an open mind.
Yeah.
Isolation tanks aren't for everyone.
Yeah.
But they offer this really unique way to explore, the inner workings of consciousness and to question what we think we know about reality.
Yeah.
Who knows what you might discover in the depths of your own being?
I love that. Well, on that note, we'll leave you with a final thought to ponder. If you could design your own reality in the tank, what would it look like? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.